Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the participants of the forum. We start our panel discussion, how to satisfy the democratic election in Ukraine after the war period. Actually, I would like to congratulate the viewers of our stream, and we will do our discussion with the best experts. This is my opinion, and to answer the questions which are the most challenging questions. The first question is whether we may have the democratic election during the Russian war invasion, and I would like to give a floor to my speakers, to the professionals. The discussion is going on the upper level and abroad. So I ask the speakers to give the estimation of the situation, how to prepare the democratic elections after the situation in our country will be normalized. We as well have the possibility to exchange the ideas after the experts will answer the questions. Suppose you have some questions you may ask to make the problem topical after the war period of time and to express the ideas. So I would like to present the speakers. It's Yulia Kirichenko. This is the member of Political Reform Center. Ms. Yulia. Pavlo Romaniuk. This is the advisor of Legal Advisor OPOR. Vita Dumanska, the leader of the movement Chesno. Olga Martinovska, the expert of the election legislation. This is the group of influence. Mrs. Olga, this is the manager, Fight for Right. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So before we start our discussion, I would like to accentuate the problem of our meeting, to stress the problem of our meeting and the context of our discussion. The last weeks, there is the topical discussion on political level whether the elections on the full-scale war conditions are possible. So several civil organizations prepare the document and the evaluation that such elections are not possible during the period of war. This document is ready to be signed for NGOs for the democratic elections not to be settled, not to diminish the standards of the election, because these standards are not to be fulfilled during the period of full-scale war. You may join this discussion after we will study it, and you may express your idea on this topic. There are colleagues from international foundations here, which will help, will assist you to get acquainted with this document. So I would like to introduce myself now. I am Alexander Klyuzhik, the expert on foundation of IFES in Ukraine. And for me, it's a great honor to be moderator of this discussion. Not to start the statement, the rather rigid statement, are the elections possible today? So I would like for everybody from the speakers to formulate in some minutes the most topical reasons for them, why the reasons are not possible, why the reasons for elections are not possible here in Ukraine during the aggression of Russian Federation. So I ask you not to encompass all the reasons, but to find the most topical factors why such elections are not possible in Ukraine. Ms. Yulia Kirichenko, the Center of Legal Reforms, you have 1 minute and a half. Please start. Please switch on the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Alexander, for everybody who are listening and to those who are the participants of the panel. For the last 15 years, I see the mission to support the legislation, the Constitution of Ukraine. The Constitution provides the full answer to your question. On the 29th of October, we are to have the parliament discussion, and we have the answer that during the military war, the elections are not possible. We have the right for life, we have the right for equity, we have the list of rights, and we do not have the list of election rights here, so they can be limited. And these rights are predicted in the law, in the military law. Whether it is said that any elections during the military aggressions are not possible, are not available. In the frames of legal rights, this is the experience of all democratic countries who have these statements. As to the parliament, I would like to draw your attention to the Article 83, which says that during the war, our parliament is available in the legal context. So this parliament may be elected only after war period. So any elections are banned. Thank you. You actually encompass your time. Pavlo Romaniuk, the NGO Opora, you observed the previous elections. What is your answer? What is your assessment of the situation? Why the elections are not possible? Thank you, Mr. Alexander. I would like to congratulate all the participants. Take it into consideration our experience of observation of elections in Ukraine. I would like to say in continuation to Yulia's idea that we cannot provide the full elections during the war period. Yulia actually was right saying about the norms of constitutions, which actually make specific barriers not to encompass the powers in Ukraine. All the rights, all the instruments, all the tools should be used for the freedom. And you can only may limit the right of word, the right of meeting, the right of movement, in order to work the tools effectively. Can we provide the democratic standards and constitution elections during such war conditions as we have? Unfortunately not. Without competition of parties, without informational messages, without political political parties, we cannot provide the basic principles of free elections, unfortunately. Because such elections are based on full analysis of electors, and we cannot actually provide full elections. We do not have, unfortunately, we cannot provide the full elections, unfortunately. Thank you, Pavlo. Vita Tomanska, this is the movement Chesno. What is your answer towards the question why the elections are not possible? Yulia actually said that constitution doesn't allow us to do it, but the election, this should be the decision of the country, not we are not ready for it. Speaking about the elections, we should provide the active and passive election law. People should be ready to be elected. We cannot provide people, 2 million of peoples who left the country, the possibility to vote. We cannot actually give this possibility to be elected. We should understand that we have two categories. These are military people and civil people. So for military people, we take out the rights to participate in election campaign in order to purify our legislation system from the Russian influence. The basic message here is to provide their right to be elected, to take part in political life. That's why the elections are not possible, because it should be the decision of Ukraine. And secondly, we cannot provide the realization of basic rights to elect and to be elected. Thank you for your answer. The same question to Olga Martanovska. In our opinion, the elections are not available because we cannot provide the safety to the civilians who came for elections. Our organization take the span of 5 years for the people to observe people who actually are migrants. And now we have the migration. Now we observe the migration during the full-scale war. And several registers, unfortunately, are not working today. And the electors cannot, the voters cannot take their legal address. We cannot foresee the quantity of people who will be in the civil groups. So my idea is to express the gratitude to those people who work in the election campaign, who stress what steps should be made in the sphere after we have the victory, and especially to provide the rights of people who left the Ukraine, to draw the attention to the mixed system of voting. So my idea is the focus on people's safety right at the first step of voting. Just in a couple of words. Thank you. Olga Hitsevich, the organization Fights for Rights. What is your argument? Good afternoon. I am the representatives of NGO which actually do with disabled people, and I may say that such elections are not possible because these elections cannot be accessible. In our activity, we support the rights of disabled people for them to know their voting rights and to know how to use it just on the same level as all the civilians of Ukraine. And now we cannot enforce to do it. We have a great danger for those people which are in the frontiers, war frontiers, and for those who left the Ukraine. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we actually analyzed the top arguments why with Russian Federation, why the elections are not possible. All the arguments in the conflicts, they are displayed in the full statement. You may join it, but general we should understand that the possibility is not possible in the full-scale war. It doesn't matter that we cannot be ready for the quality election. We should be ready for the quality election, and my speakers actually may correct me that the scope of problems are very vast, and we should be ready to tackle with the complex of the tasks. So we can say that we are not working. The second part of our discussion will focus on the readiness. What should be done in order to be ready for the discussion, to have the full calculations, to have the full predictions for the parliament, for the bodies of the elections, to be ready to realize the election laws of the civilians during the proper rights. And I actually take the basic top topics to discuss with you. We will focus on this legal statements and take it in consideration the ideas of our experts and I'm trying to make a draft of plan what is possible to do according to this problematic issue. So we will start from financial issue, because even in this context, money actually works as the argument. But I would like to discuss election finances, the ability of Ukraine to renovate the potentials and to come to after-war period elections with the new approaches, with the new standards of transparency, of financial transparency. And I would like to propose to Mrs. Domanska from Chesno to put focus to priority tasks for the subjects of the elections, to have the proper elections for the state and for the elector, to be sure that the financial part of this problem has the legal origin and is used according to legislation, and we don't have any black influences of after-war period. Because after war period, we have frauds, we will have frauds, and it will cost us much. Because the violation of the rules will actually taken by the society very patiently. What about finance? What about finance? Thank you. It is very interesting to speak about money. This is the G spot of the Ukrainian politics. So I think that these elections will be interesting. So financing, financial part is the part of our state to provide finance. Sometimes the foreign investors will have us. I think to concentrate on such aspect, transparency, financial transparency. Secondly, these are the transparent taxation. And the third aspect is the enlarging of the sources of financing. So I would like to analyze three of them. It's very cool that we have the free documents, the open reports which are available today are very important. Because the Ukrainians may learn who is financed by whom. I think that these reports actually connected with the election accounts, and only finally we may learn about their ground. Why it is important to know about reports? First of all, to know about the origin of finance. This question should be regulated. The second aspect, that there are several tools of transparency which open the ground which is not working for all the civilians. So it is important here to have the access to these financial sources. So the question of fake donors is open. I don't think that the war question will influence much it. We should work on this aspect. What concerns of taxation transparency? We know that there are some financing, like volunteers, financiers, which are not in the focus of attention. So we are to work on the aspects of legislation, legalizing free sources, especially of the people who are working in election companies. We should try to be very transparent as to the risks of wide free reports which are given by the parties. So all the money which are used should be declared and should be displayed. The resources of financing is a very specific question. We see now that people in our society make donations. They do donations in different directions. Fundraising here is a great potential matter here. It may be used in the sphere of politics, and now it is observed on the level of the war operations. Now we see that the parties are working with the fundraising actively, so they collect money for different military groups, and this experience, which actually parliaments members of parliaments have, this experience may be used in our future. But fundraising is based on transparent reporting. So we are focused on full transparency here, because people demand here the results, how this money was used. So this experience should be used widely, because these money are easily converted into our future, in our success, better than the cash which are brought to the members of parliament. So we should focus on transparency for the electors to know who financed each party, to work on free, transparent taxation for fundraising, political fundraising, to be the trend in politics. Thank you. I have just the question, a specific question. We are now focus on the reporting of political parties, and this the experience. Do they influence your view? Are the elites, are the politicians ready ready for the future? Can I speak some bad things? Yes. We understand that that advocacy reporting, we play it with it for 4 years, and the idea of the parties was not to open the reports, but another moment is that, suppose not the influence of foreigners, but the influence of the foreigners, we won't have the transparent reporting. Thank you for the tasks which actually are revised, and we closed a very important question here. What is the origin of money? So we will shift to the question of the concrete questions of the organization election after the war. In my opinion, the key word here is inclusiveness, because the sharp matter here is the problem of the accessibility, the legal accessibility. And unfortunately, there are the objective reasons. We have many internally moved persons. We have many electors who traveled abroad, and we have many disabled people due to the full-scale war of Russian Federation, and we can't imagine these people without legal elections, and we should give answers to them, how they are to be taken to the legal voting and taken into account. I would like Olga Hitsevich from Fight to Right, and I would like to ask her whether on the legal level you start your work with the disabled people, and what are the priorities here, and what are the challenging questions, challenging aspects here after war elections will take place, and whether it is realistic much to improve the access of these people to legal elections. Thank you for the question. I would like to start from the matter whether the work is starting. Yes, we started our work. Step by step we are moving, and it is connected with the question that that Ukraine now is viewed as a member of UN. And we have the internal question that the ministries which are responsible for this or that process and other bodies, the ministries are not able to contact. They cannot contact with each other. They do not know how to work with feedbacks, and they cannot work with the civil organizations, with the civil people. They cannot meet challenges taken into experience of our organizations working with the disabled people. And our advocacy activity is focused on this work, working with ministries, with this civil bodies. We try to influence the empowered people, to listen to those who are working, who are they working with? Disabled people. In 2020, we provide the analysis as to the election process for the disabled people, and we find the barriers which are very sharp. And these barriers, they will be topical after the war period, when all the people and even disabled people can use their election law. So we find the barriers, and so this work should be topical today and should start today. The first barrier is the architectural barrier. It is not a secret that for the people who is disabled to move to the election spot, the election spot should be equipped with special equipment and should meet special standards. And the booth actually is not equipped properly to the standards of disabled people, unfortunately. And it happened very rarely that a disabled person can move to the election spot. The disabled personality is the representative of our society. So the central entrances should be equipped for such people. So the second barrier, this is the informational barrier. I think that not all of you can say that whether such people who are deaf people, and how can they learn about the program of the elector. Deaf people, unfortunately, is left behind here. These people do not have the access to the information. We do not have the translation of the language of gestures. So another barrier is the census barrier. The person with the intellectual violation come to the election spot, and he or she may find him in the group of civilians. It can be a stress for such people. For a person, for intellectually another barrier is the barrier of communication. The electors and the supervisors at the election spots, they do not understand how to communicate to disabled people. They do not know what are the strategies. They don't know about the special dictionary of words which are banned. So you can't speak invalid, you can only say, well, disabled person. People usually do not follow this strategy of political correctness here. And probably an important barrier which exists here, this is the absence of independency. And usually it happens that during election process it is not allowed to the people to use the gadgets, electronic gadgets. And for the deaf people, it's a great problem, for example, because they do not have the pointers. They cannot operate without gadgets. So we have a kind of a problem here. So a disabled person is becoming a person who can vote only at home. No, this is not the strategy. This is a person from the civil society who can come to election spot and who can vote. So this person has the rights of a human, of a civilian. Thank you for the problem discussed, but to focus on, I would like to express the idea when the politicians understand the problem that the state unfortunately doesn't provide the access to the people, but we understand the infrastructure unfortunately become bad due to the influence of Russian aggression, especially in the regions which suffered. So people ask what to do when we have limited resources. How can you answer this question? How can you provide your answer? We have the limited resources, so we have the task to provide proper elections, to disabled people. So how can you answer this question? So I can answer this question in a way that these matters should be delegated to the civilian levels, to the civilian groups, whether to the representatives of those who are the head of disabled civilian groups. I can't say, but in my opinion, the civil organizations should understand its budgets, to understand how a person can move to the election spot. So we can't say that there is one standard for the precinct to be equipped. So this question should be discussed on the level of civil group. Thank you. We will continue our discussion. We will focus on the voters who are abroad. This is a complicated question, and this is the political question. We have this experience for the first time that such quantity of people are abroad. So these people are to interact with the foreign countries, and this is not only the legal issue, this is the political issue. How we can satisfy the proper election abroad. But from you, Mr. Pavlo, I would like to hear what are the variants to satisfy the election rights to the people who are abroad? Not a declared strategy, but the strategy de facto. Where to find the resources and what the resource is needed for the people to vote abroad. And I would like you to dwell the question which is not closed, and how many voters are abroad. This is the closed question, which is not so much topical, but still, we are to plan the quality voting. So you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Sasha. So I will start from the end. If we cannot give the quantity of people who are abroad, how can we satisfy the election rights of such people? This is what we are speaking about today. We speak about inclusiveness. We state the question. So the first after-war elections will be very complicated. The inclusiveness, the role of inclusiveness of people abroad, as well as the transferred people inside the country, military people who actually defend our country and react towards the aggression, Russian aggression. So when we are speaking about the information, what kind of information our state bodies operate, this question is very topical today, and mass media share different data, starting from the minimal dating up to the 8 million of people who are abroad, from 7 till 8 million of people who are abroad. This information is taken from site, so we have different data. I can only say for sure that for today we do not have the transparent calculations, neither from the point of view of state, neither from the point of view of international organizations. There are millions of Ukrainians abroad, and even minimal 4.0 million of Ukrainians who are abroad will severely make a gravity to the infrastructure. So we actually spoke about renovation of a voting mechanism today. But today the topical problem is that we didn't have any infrastructure abroad, and our task is how can we actually how can we to do with such scope of people. We can do only elections in diplomatical bodies, diplomatical spots. The precincts are based on diplomatical bodies. So additional election spots, this is the political question. And different discussions are done today on the level of the state bodies, between the working groups. Today the Central Election Committees spoke about the Solidarity Platform, which actually as community help assist to organize us such elections. And as a NBO Opora, we are doing some researches, analyzing the dynamics of such people, and we can just observe these dynamics. And today, we can't make the final predictions taking into account such complicated processes. We cannot do. We can do it only after the war period. Uh, Within the working group, we discuss the active register of the electors, voters. The voter may register himself and actually be registered. Beside, we can do a kind of a vast voting, and inside the working group discussing the after-war period, we discuss different tools as the enlarge the quantity of precincts. Besides, we are supporting the idea of working day, of enlarging working day, taking into account different factors, making voting period enlarged for some days even. This is one of the tools how to make this process more effective. Our working group Opora presented in Tuesday the analysis, which is the result of working with the diplomats, with the embassies, claiming that inside the embassies there is more than 1,000 of people who may be involved into this process of election. The quantity may be enlarged up to more than 2,000. Take it into consideration the last election of the president. We see many flaws. We can speak much about it, but yes, thank you. How much time do we need to calculate the quantities of additional precincts, election spots? Probably you may speak about in brief about the financing. When we are to start, we are to start right now. The elections are not provided during the war period, as people say. Yes, you are right, but we should predict, we should be ready, because we don't know how much time do we need after the war period for this process. And much depends upon how we make the registration of the voters. The general quantity of people which will be available can be ready only after the active registration. This process may take a month or some months, and within the limits of the election laws may be several changes. But these processes are very complicated to be predicted. So for today, we think that we need more than 6 months after the war period to be ready for the elections. The experience of Bosnia and Herzegovina, they take 6, 9 months, and finally they take 1 year. The more the war will be prolonged, this term will be prolonged as well. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we will do the last blog, doing with the inclusiveness and this. I would like to ask Ms. Olga to dwell upon uh, the issue.
І чим зараз ситуація по цим викликам відрізняється від тієї, яка у нас була з 2014 року? Прошу спікерів дотримуватися зараз дедлайну, тому що ми вже дещо
I would like speakers to follow the deadline. And now I would like Mrs. Olga to speak about internally displaced persons. So the quantity of internally displaced person, the register is closed according to the voting legislation. We have the possibility to change the legislation address of our dwelling. But what is to be indicated, I would like to add, Pavlo, that the faster we start this period, the faster we will open the register and open to update the database. We should understand how many people are involved in this process. Because during this period there are many changes and there are people who are without who are disabled people. There are different categories of people here. So we are to do much work with register and much depend on the register. So we will speak about election spots which are to be equipped properly. So we are to think about additional election spots, probably some temporary buildings, but we cannot calculate people and we cannot actually foresee the calculation process. Suppose it started, the migrants will have only 5 days to change their address. And in my opinion, it is possible to involve different institutions to have this information campaign. Because we may involve DIA, for example, to inform people, because many of the migrants are ready to come back. Some people are not registered. So for us, it is very important to put into order the register of voters. So we should use nice practices from previous years. For example, to launch informational campaigns for voters who are the first voters. And additionally, I would like to stress the active and passive election law. So it should be provided, and I would like to express my gratitude to my colleagues, to the registers of voters on different levels, how they work, how they react on our additional conditions to make the process softer. So for us, it is important to have this vast informational campaign for social bodies to inform people, not to give them this possibility to make changes into the register, to find the feedback from the voter. When we come to the election spot, we find the people who are dead issues in the lists. People who are dead, they cannot participate. They cannot participate. In order to get rid of such situations, so we ask people to go to special registers to inform that your relative cannot vote, for example, not to have some dead souls in the lists, for us to have a professional
Дякую,
approach.
пані Ольго.
Thank you, Ms.
Я
Olga.
запрошую Юлію
I
Кириченко
would like to invite Yulia Kirichenko
об'єктивної оцінки безпекової ситуації на тих територіях, які
to find her ideas about the territories which will suffer from Russian aggression even after war period of time.
певні неокуповані території, що перебуватимуть в нестабільному
We also can say that some territories will not be stable even after war period of time. So, how to evaluate the situation objectively? Whether the elections may be conducted on such territories, not to use some bad experiences, but would like to ask you to share with the ideas what are the specific of voting routine of military people, if such situation may be prognosed, may be foreseen for our military people, even such problem will be arised and how it could be solved. Thank you, Alexander. Yes, speaking about the issue, I would like to stress that the first election after war period will be the same we experienced previously. That will be just the transferred period with some specific matters. Historically, this is the experience. Transferred period. During the technical equipment, the Europe hasn't experienced the war which is now conducted on the level of Ukrainian background, saying that peace is the last dot is not foreseen matter today. We can only speak about some conclusions, economic, financial, military. We can say for sure right now that during the peace period, we can see that there will be the territories where Ukraine cannot be able to provide the transparent voting process, even saying that finally this is peace. We can say that this is military stage. We stay for sure that the war stop, but without it, there will be the territories where the state, even if it controls the territory, cannot provide a proper election process for a person, for a voter, a safety election process. For sure, the right for life is the priority life, and a person should think about it. So, there will be territories where the elections maybe objectively cannot be provided. It doesn't mean that the people cannot realize their voting right. Yes, they can realize, but there won't be any voting spots there. But the ability to change their location of the voter, to change it for another region, this possibility will be given. Taking about the aspect of mining, many areas are mined. Unfortunately, 2 years usually are taken to demine these territories. Um, uh, Near the borders, there are no guarantees that the safety locations will be available, unfortunately. The next, claiming about the infrastructure, saying about infrastructure, I cannot say about previously occupied. We can't say it directly, but previously occupied territories. Renovated of all renovation of all European rights and freedoms. Can we provide elections without Crimea? No, unfortunately. So all the rules, all constitutional rights on such territories like Crimea should be renewed. Safety. The aspect of safety is discussed, and still we think about IFES today, speaking about the safety. So it should be the direct criterion on the level of law, and such law should be again followed by the organizations. The safety criterion should be again preceded, foreseen by the legislation. On the March of 2024, we are to start presidential campaign. But our position is, our view is that we cannot do it. The safety criterion here is to find the distant criterion, and the central voting commission is a central commission which is responsible for all the issues as on to the every concrete area. In RNBO, the RNBO here is responsible for each territory. There is. It doesn't mean that the people cannot vote on such territories. They can change the address. They can come and vote in different region, or in this region, or in the central region. The central commission, voting commission, make the changes, and this decision should be taken by RNBO. And our idea is that this is not the priority of RNBOs. So our position is, as constitutional member, is to delegate this position to the members of parliament, to the central voting commission, and the decision again may be discussed in courts, prime courts. Thank you, Ms. Yulia. I know, dear colleagues, that we actually prolonged our discussion, unfortunately. We are to have our lunch. So I would like finally to give the possibility to participants to this process. What is your attitude to the ideas of the colleagues, and as to the impossible voting during the war period? Suppose you end questions to our experts, please. Dear colleagues, I'm representatives of the Fond Femida, and I would like to ask the question. Speaking about the elections, we speak about the process of the about legislation process, and we are to introduce many changes to legislations. And the democracy practice says that suppose you make some changes, it is to the law. It's better that another legislation parliaments will proceed with it. Because many questions appeared as to the quality of the members of parliament. So, do your working group process the questions how to avoid manipulations, um, uh, not to make some additional changes to legislation? So, not to change dramatically voting system in Ukraine. What do you think? How to avoid tremendous changes to our voting legislation? Do you take it into consideration? Take it into consideration the constitutional background. So, is Ms. Yulia, can you answer yes? Yes, constitutional is not to be changed during the war. So after the war period, uh, the legislation voting process should be done according to the laws. We can only objectively solve the problem. We cannot actually say yes for it. We are working without politicians. We are working publicly, and we focus on civil society, on legislation which are moved by civil society, claiming that there won't be any perfect after-war elections, but we can predict severe problems, and we are very straight as to our strategy, and we can actually limit our parliament from severe changes. Do you have any Do you have any comments? Several questions. So, and to the final dot, this is my home task, home assignment. We speak about the elections after war, which are not possible. But we should be realistic. There can be different scenarios of Russian aggression finishing, and different situations may take place, and how the society uh, can work, can understand that the conditions are for the real democratic elections. My answer, I understand that we should be short. We should renovate all the constitutional laws, the right for law, the right for meeting, as to the pre-war period, and to renew all the conditions of pre-war period, practical realization. Do we have any speakers? And we would like to renovate on occupational territories the Ukrainian powers on the level of safety. the problem of safety will be the basic problem after the war. And when the legislator prepare with us all the changes which make it possible the realization of democratic standards and the voting standards for all the categories of voters, as the abroad voters, as the inner voters, as the military people, which actually do with aggression of Russian Federation. Finally, we finish our discussion. Thank you to Olga, Viti, Yulia, Pavlo for very interesting discussion. We can speak for some hours, and
є спільна заява громадських організацій про неприпустимість проведення виборів в умовах повномасштабної війни. Вже її підписали більше 30 організацій. Можна звертатися до громадянських мережі щодо логістики підписання цієї заяви.
so suppose you support our statement. Along with you, we will plan the democratic elections. Thank you ever so much. And for you participants of speakers.